Hello, everyone, and welcome to training number 1 from the Minnesota Department of Education. We are here today to talk about you getting ready for your program approval application. My name is Shelley Souls, and I am the Career and Technical Education Coordinator here at MDE. And with me today,
good morning, everyone. My name is Dean Brewer. I'm the Business Marketing and Information Technology Specialist in our Career and Tech Ed unit at MDE. Welcome.
Thank you. And today, like I mentioned, is training 1. We're going to talk a little bit about the why we are asking your district to turn in your program approval renewal application, and also how you can go about doing that. Part 2 of our training is going to be very specific to the different content areas that we have in career and technical education. We have very many different content areas. Specifically, we have agriculture, food, and natural resources. We have business programs, marketing programs, family consumer science programs. We have many different service occupations, including early childhood, fabric apparel design education, hospitality careers, law enforcement careers, and cosmetology. We also have health science education. We have multiple trade and industry programs, including manufacturing, transportation, communications, and construction. We also have work-based learning programs, both diversified and ACTE SPED work-based learning programs. So that's going to be part 2 of our training. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can get access to those trainings a little later in our PowerPoint. And so for today, our agenda, we're going to talk first about why MDE is asking your district to fill out this program approval. We're going to talk a little bit about what is bucket 1 and bucket 2, why you're filling out the form, and then how to continuously improve your career and technical education programs. We're going to talk about the funding that your career and technical education programs will have access to, other resources through program approval. We're going to remind you of what CTE is and what it isn't. We're going to then talk about the actual application, the spreadsheet application. We'll go through that, talk about some of the priority tabs. We'll talk about the dates for submission and review, and then we'll give you an opportunity to contact us if you need additional help. So let's get started with a quick timeline. Spring is here almost. Right now, as we're doing this recording, there's some snow on the ground, but we're hoping that as you watch this, the snow will be gone and the tulips will be popping up, and you will be thinking about training and getting ready to fill out the program approval application spreadsheet. We're going to ask that during this spring, you gather evidence and take a look at what it takes to complete the application. Once June rolls around, on June 1st, your district can begin submitting their program approval application to MDE. And as a reminder, the final date for submitting that is November 1st. So your district has between June 1st and November 1st to submit your district's program approval application. And why? Why are we asking you to fill out this application? What is the purpose of program approval in career and technical education? Well, number 1, there are Minnesota rule requirements and legislation that says that on at least a 5-year cycle basis, each district needs to go through and validate the rigor and alignment of their career and technical education courses to the workforce needs, state and national frameworks and standards. There's also federal law around career and technical education that we want to tie our Minnesota secondary programs to, and that includes programs of study. We also want to make sure that, again, we're aligning and coordinating with our post-secondary partners and our workforce partners so that our students in high school are learning what the future of work looks like in that specific content area. One of the other reasons, and the big reason why a lot of districts focus on the program approval, is because there is funding tied to the program approval, the approval of career technical education programs. Now, there are two different funding streams. One is state funds and the other is federal funds. State funds are the career and technical education revenue stream. We often call that the levy. And the levy is there to reimburse a district 35% of what their eligible expenditures were in that school year. The revenue is really there to sustain and maintain the program. A lot of what the revenue includes is the teacher's salary and specific supplies that are unique to career and technical education. That is state funds. There are also federal funds. We call those the Pertains funds, and those funds are really for strengthening career and technical education. So those are funds for innovation. Those are funds for industry grade equipment, specific curriculum, supplemental curriculum, and professional development resources for our teachers. All of the Pertains funding and federal funding is tied to your regional comprehensive local needs assessment that is done at the Pertains consortium level. So again, two types of funding, state funding and federal funding, goes along with the career and technical education approved programs.
So to give you a little insight in the process that you are beginning, we think of the program approval process in two phases or two buckets. Bucket one is what you're entering right now, the phase where we are processing your application for an original program or renewal of an existing program. And we're doing that to maintain your eligibility for those two funding sources that Shelley just mentioned. And so again, the applications due no later than November 1st, processing generally completed with either approving or denying the program by the end of January. And so we've got a couple of month window of time from the time that we receive your application to finish and give you final word on the final disposition of the program approval. Bucket two then follows after that. That's continuous improvement. That is a required element of program approval. It's required in statute. And so once we've got your program renewed or approved, then it is what are the steps to continually improve our CTE programs so they're stronger and more aligned to the courses and programs that we have for the next renewal cycle. So breaking down each of these two elements just a little bit, we're entering the year one now, bucket one right now. And so this is when your primary focus is on program approval renewal. During this phase, the emphasis is on compliance with state rule requirements, meeting minimum requirements. This is an important consideration, and your program field specialist will help you in more detail talking about health science programs, family consumer science, business programs. But program approval identifies minimum requirements, not necessarily perfect programs. So you will be guided to what are the minimum requirements so that it can be approved. And then as part of continuous improvement, which we'll talk about in a moment, you'll get some sort of notes and ideas and suggestions how you can make that program stronger. But so a key element here is we're not comparing you to the biggest, to the strongest programs in the state. We're comparing you to the minimum expectations, the minimum requirements to meet program approval. And so we're verifying your CTE program eligibility, so as we said, so that you can maintain access to the funding. So when we get into continuous improvement, once your program is approved for renewal, the next 4+ years in the process should be devoted to continuous improvement activities. Examples of this work that could take place at the school district level through your Pertains consortia, or that could be facilitated by your MDE career field specialist, include looking at student performance data, analyzing workforce needs and comparing that to the current status of the courses and the programs you're offering, looking at teacher professional development needs, curriculum development needs. And all with the goal that over those next 4 years, maybe having fewer standalone introductory courses, being able to go deeper into programs of study, having more sequences of courses that have intermediate or advanced levels of courses. So we're moving students more into category from participants, not just taking a single course, to concentrators, taking 2 or more courses in a particular field of study, and increasing opportunities for students to engage in work-based learning or earn industry credentials. And so those are all the things that during that 4 years of continuous improvement, we look for opportunities of examining where we are and where we could go with our programs over the intervening next 4 years before that next renewal cycle begins again. So we've tried to put together several resources that will assist you in the process of putting together your program approval application. The first one that we're going to show is a document that's called Table C. And I'll put that on the screen here. And Table C has different tabs on the bottom for each of the various program areas that you would be looking to approve. I happen to have the business one up at this point. And so you see the course codes and the program codes. Those are 2 key elements of what information you will enter on tab 4. You're going to get that more training on that in the part 2 training. But notice as we click on any of the various tabs, you see the programs, this one related to trade and industry transportation. Here are the program codes, and then you see the various courses that you may be listing to want to have approved. Here's the AF&R tab, you see the programs, and you see the courses. Each of these includes, if you double click under course description, gives you a brief idea, a brief explanation or overview of the kind of content, the kind of learning that would happen in that course. So any of the tabs, if you're not certain where it should be listed, you can look at some of that information and read the general presentation of the overview to see if you are potentially aligning correctly to that. This is also an important sheet because it will go through, and we'll scroll to the top, the various licenses that are required. So for any of the tabs, if you're looking to have that program approved, you look over in this area and it will list the 1 or more eligible licenses that a teacher would have to hold to be able to be qualified to teach in that program. So again, we look at example in trade and industry, we see one in business. If you have any of those 4 licenses, then you could be an approved teacher for that program as we're looking at that. So the Table C resource will be very important as you go through and update your information. Remember, depending on the program area you're in, Table C could have changed over the last 5 years. And so if you're looking at older documents you may have different course or program codes. You want to be following the newest information in the newest Table C. Now, the next resource I'll briefly summarize are our Minnesota frameworks. Each of our program areas has its own set of frameworks or elective standards. So when you go to our CTE page, under programs and support, each area has its own set of frameworks on the bottom. So we're looking at AF&R. If you scroll to the bottom of the AF&R page, you see the various frameworks documents related to different sections of the courses. These sections should match up with Table C. If you look at business, marketing, and information technology, we scroll to the bottom, and you see a set of documents that match again with Table C. Here's the courses, if you were looking at accounting and finance courses. Here's business management. Here's hospitality and tourism. Those would all match up to the sets of courses you see on Table C. And so if you are looking for the information on what frameworks to demonstrate your alignment to when you're preparing your evidence documents, your syllabus or other evidence, you'll want to be using those frameworks. Then finally, we've got a database available of currently approved programs. So this may be as a starting point for you to look at what does MDE currently show in our records for what courses and programs you have approved. This is an Excel spreadsheet, so it can be filtered, it can be sorted, so you can find your district information. And so when you find your consortia and your district, then you can see over here to the right, again, the various program numbers and the various course numbers that we currently have in our database as approved. So that may be a starting point to make sure that if you are still offering all of those courses and programs, you make sure that all of those are included in your application materials. Now, to the slide where we get to talk about, to make sure we're all talking on the same page about what is career and technical education. Career and technical education is not necessarily everything that the family consumer science teacher teaches, or not everything the business teacher teaches. Career and technical education, we are focused on two different elements. We're focusing on the career, the center of the wheel aspects, thinking about that Minnesota career wheel, and the technical aspects, those 6 career fields that go around it. So it is the career, both, it is a combination of both. If we are only doing career exploration, or we are only exploring technical aspects of a program, we're not doing career and tech in. So focusing on one. So for example, you hear the term career and college readiness. That is a career exploration, a career preparation activity. But if a course is primarily only focused on career and college readiness and not technical preparation aspects for a career pathway, then that's not CTE. And that would be a course that would be challenging, or simply would not be able to be approved under a program approval process. So we are validating the rigor and alignment of courses. And that's going to require, likely, in most cases, active participation of teachers in this process. We are aware that the districts can choose to implement this process however they choose, and quite often that involves active participation of an administrator, perhaps a building principal, perhaps a curriculum person. But for the types of evidence that we're going to talk about here and will be discussed in the Part 2 training, we will say from experience that it's fairly difficult if the teachers are not involved, because the teachers have the most experience of what they are doing related to the different elements we're asking for. So we encourage you, hopefully there is a team of both teachers and administrators watching this video. You'll watch the Part 2 as well. And as you make a plan for developing your application materials, we strongly encourage you to consider having a combination of both teachers and administrators as a team developing those materials.
Well, thank you, Dean. That was very informative. We hope that those of you that are watching are ready now to dive into the application form, the program approval application form. So today, as this is training part 1, we wanted to go through some of the similar tabs that you're going to see. Now, a program approval application form needs to be filled out for each unique program. So as Dean showed us on table C, there are different program codes. There's a code for business, there's a code for transportation, there's a code for health science. Each one of those requires its own application. So in training 1, we've talked about the why, and we're going to show you the application, talk about the priority tabs that are general and not unique to each of the content areas. Training number 2 will go over the unique parts of the application that are going to be different in those different programs. So when you open up the program approval application form, you will open that up to a directions and checklist tab. This tab is very important for you to look at. It will walk through the steps that you need to go through so everything is completed correctly. And you will also have access to a lot of different links to Table C, links to the different content specialists, links to the different websites that we have talked about that you can utilize in filling out the form. So please take a moment when you open the form to make sure that you recognize the directions and you're following those and completing the form and submitting it correctly. The first part of the spreadsheet, just a reminder, thank you, Dean. The application, just a reminder, it is your official application to the Department of Education for your career and technical education program. So we do ask, as I mentioned, that you read the instructions, make sure you're completing it fully and accurately so we can receive your application and not have too many questions or issues that we need to go back and forth on. Another part of the official application is the syllabi and the evidence that you're submitting that your program is meeting all of those minimum requirements that are set out in Minnesota rule. Another thing we're going to talk, and your specialists are going to show really some specific examples. They're going to potentially give you some worksheets and ideas, but the program approval application should be unique and show off your CTE program at your district. It should not be something that says, this is what I aspire to be, or this is what I saw and it looked really good, I'm going to throw that into the syllabi. It really should be a reflection of what's currently happening in your program. And Dean mentioned earlier, and it is worth repeating, we are not looking for perfect CTE programs. As the process is, we're asking them make sure that you meet minimum requirements. But over the next 4 years, we will do continuous improvement. We are always aware that industry standards are changing and careers are changing and technology is coming in. And we are hoping that through this process, our career and technical education programs and courses that we offer our high school students are also keeping up with that technology and those changes. So we do expect that there will be updates, and we will continuously improve and help you improve your programs. So as I mentioned, we're going to walk through the application form. On the application form, it consists of 5 tabs. The application form is an Excel spreadsheet. So you will be filling it out in Excel and submitting it back to MDE in Excel form. The first priority tab, as we're calling it, tab 1, we need to know a little bit about your program and the specifics. Where is your program located? What is it at? What is the program code? And who should we contact if we have specific questions about the program? Now, quite often this is the teacher, because we know that teachers know their programs best. You can, as you can see here, you could list multiple names. You could list a single name. You could list an administrator as well as a teacher. Give us the information about, if we have questions specifically about the evidence you submitted or your applications, please let us know who we can contact during our review process. That is tab 1. Tab 3 of the form is very specific to teacher licensure. As Dean showed us on the table C, there is a list of not only the programs and courses, but what the license it can be for a teacher who can teach in that program. So we need to make sure that all teachers have an appropriate career and technical education license. That includes any out-of-field license, a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4 license are all eligible to teach career and technical education. If the application includes a work-based learning program, there is also an endorsement that those teachers are required to have to teach the classroom courses in that specific program. If your teachers are on and out of field permission, or as we know is happening out there quite a bit, teachers are turning over and you may need to hire someone new or renew their tier 1, tier 2, or out of field permission, we would like to suggest that you start working with PELSB sooner than later. So all out of field permissions expire in June. Before you can submit your application, again, it's an official application to MDE, you do need to have all teachers listed on the form on tab 3 with the proper license. So make sure that before you turn in your form, you are getting those teachers the license that they need and assigning those teachers to the courses and programs that they can teach. And tab 5 of the program approval application form is all about an advisory committee. An advisory committee is required by Minnesota rule that all career and technical education programs must have an advisory committee. An advisory committee is really there to, as we said, keep the teacher informed about any changes in industry and updated on what the trends and potentially the equipment is in that program or in that career field. It is a requirement that at least 50% of the members must come directly from business and industry, and that your district meets with their, or your program meets with their advisory committee at least twice per year. So the information that we need to gather from the program-specific advisory committee is their information about who they are, where they work, and specifically what program they're going to represent in that specific advisory role. There is potentially going to be additional people on the advisory committee. Sometimes we like to include post-secondary staff, maybe high school administrators, or parents, and people that are in the education field. Those should not be included as part of, those will not be included as part of the business and industry 50% requirement. You should also not list the teacher of the program, as they're not able to advise themselves on what's happening in their program. So just a quick look at what the tab 5 looks like. We're going to ask specifically what program code this professional is representing in a specific program. So who they are, where they work, and what they're representing. Now, this is a little bit different than program approval applications in the past. We have actually moved the signature portion of this requirement and the fact that a district needs to have a superintendent or licensed CTE director sign off on a statement of assurances. This is a statement of assurances to say that, yes, we are in our district supporting career and technical education by having appropriate licensed teachers, room for students. We are providing all of the different aspects of what the requirements are around program design and student leadership and safety. We're also making sure that all districts are complying with federal and state rules. So during part of the process of program approval, your district superintendent, licensed CTE director, and or the special education director will be sent a digital, secure digital way to sign the program approval application form.
So we've tried to talk about during this session why we do program approval, a little bit of the how to do, some of the resources that we've got available, and we've talked about 3 of the 5 tabs on the application form. The Part 2 training, which Shelley went through earlier, will be specific by program area. So if you are an AF&R teacher or supporting AF&R programs, there will be a separate Part 2 training just for you. If you are business, if you are trade and industry, each of these areas will have a separate Part 2 training to go through the elements you see on the screen here. Tab 2 covers required elements for program design, and those include student leadership, career development, and safety. So that Part 2 training will help you put together the evidence you need to demonstrate that you're meeting those elements of rule. The tab 4 is where you're listing all of your programs and courses that you want approved and renewed. And again, so that's where that table C document is so important. And the frameworks documents are important. You're showing the alignment to indicators and benchmarks there. And then the syllabi or evidence that you will submit to us that goes with each of those courses. And we'll explain a little more detail why we use those two words. Basically, while most districts do develop some kind of a syllabus, we cannot require you to give us everything we need in a syllabus format. So while we do want a syllabi for each course, some of the evidence you provide might actually take the form of another type of document. And again, those Part 2 trainings will go through that. Each of the specialists will give some examples and provide ideas for how you might submit some of the evidence depending on the courses you are submitting for approval. So again, fleshing out a little bit more about the simple outline we started with. Now is the time in the spring to begin getting the application form, starting to pull together the resources that you will need, know where the frameworks are, access the Table C, start pulling those resources together and started developing your application form materials and start developing, reviewing, revising syllabi and evidence documents. You can't submit anything to us before June 1st. The system won't be open. We can't accept it, can't process. But if you happen to have a really good spring and you get all these things ready, you have your application ready, you could begin submitting as soon as June 1st. Then if you are a district that looks at some of this information and says, we may be changing a superintendent, we may be changing a principal, we may have some teacher changes, we may be changing some courses, and we're not certain on the final set of courses, then our recommendation is develop as much as you can and wait until August, wait till September when those things are finalized before you submit. You don't want to submit your application and while we're in the process of working with it, have to tell us that this person or that course has changed. So if you anticipate or if you know that such changes will take place, don't wait until and not do any part of the work. Do as much of it as you can. And then when those changes are finalized, then you can finish the remaining elements of your application. Remember that November 1st would be the final date that we want to receive your initial application materials. And then there is a checklist and timeline document on our website, on our program approval website. And I don't think we've got, let's see, I'll try and show that here. And so right here, program approval checklist and timeline. And it gives you some sample steps to make sure you're working through what you're working through and a rough outline of where you might expect pacing your work to make sure that you're done by a certain period of time. I like to say in my Part 2 training, I remind business teachers that you may want to be timing this out so you're not necessarily having to do this work by the time workshop week or MDE break or Thanksgiving break. There are elements of the school year we know are coming, and at some point, you probably don't want to still have involvement of not having this work completed. And so consider what your spring, consider what your summer, what your fall will look like for how you'll put all this work together to finalize your application materials. So as we've mentioned, there will be part two trainings. Information should go out from our various career field specialists to the teachers that we have on record. If the district is interested in having an administrator or an additional person involved, please work with your teachers in that program because our contacts generally go out to the teachers in that program first. But we do welcome and encourage administrators and other folks that will be supporting teachers in developing their application materials. So all are welcome to be able to attend if you are going to be completing this work or supporting the teachers that will be completing this work. And so finally, as we wrap up, we'll try and speak long enough so we can leave this slide on the screen for you for a few moments. Here's contact information for the folks that should be able to help you out, depending on your specific program area. And obviously, then also Michelle Kamenoff and Shelley Souls on the screen is here. If you've got larger program issues, maybe if your issues are across multiple program areas. And so you can see both phone numbers and email addresses there. We hope that we have covered the key information. We know that there will likely be specific questions that are specific to your program. And so again, while this was intended to be the broad overview, if you've got specific questions or challenges, please reach out to the career field specialist you see listed there. That is our job to help you get this process as efficiently, as effectively, and as accurately as you can. And so I will wrap up my comments. Shelley, anything else that you want to add before we close?
I think, Dean, if you want to pull that screen back over, And we will show everyone the program approval page on our MDE website.
Sure.
That not only has access to the timeline, it also has the application form. It will have the program approval database that was referenced, and it will also have that table C that was referenced earlier. So this is a great page as a resource if you are working on applying for a new program or updating your program approval during the 5-year renewal. This is a great page that you'll probably be referencing quite a bit. And with that, I think we will be done for today, and hopefully we hear from you soon and we're able to help you with any of your program approval application questions. We look forward to seeing you in part 2 of our trainings. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.